When Sarah looked into his eyes and said no, she destroyed a millionaire. He had everything money could buy, except her. She was just a maid, but she taught him the most expensive lesson of his life. Dignity has no price. The Harrison estate had 17 rooms that Sarah needed to clean every single day. 17 empty spaces where only her footsteps echoed against imported marble floors. Sometimes she wondered if anyone actually lived there, or if it was just a monument to wealth that no one truly inhabited. It was 6 in the morning when she passed through the electronic gate, showing her badge to the security guard who already knew her face by heart. 3 weeks in this job through the agency. 3 weeks earning twice what she made at other houses. Enough to finally enroll Emma in the private school her daughter kept asking about with those hopeful eyes that broke Sarah's heart. "Morning, George," she greeted the groundskeeper watering the white hydrangeas in the garden. "Morning, Sarah. Careful today. Mr. Harrison's home. Got back from his business trip around dawn." Sarah nodded, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. In 3 weeks, she'd seen Marcus Harrison only twice, always in passing, phone pressed to his ear, impeccable suit, never once noticing her presence, exactly how she preferred it. The kitchen was silent when she prepared breakfast according to Mrs. Chen's instructions, the housekeeper who'd taken vacation the previous week. Fresh orange juice, French bread, imported cheeses, fruit cut into perfect shapes, food for one person that could feed her family for days. "So, you're the new one." The male voice made her turn abruptly. Marcus Harrison stood in the kitchen doorway, hair still damp from his shower, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar revealing tanned skin. Too handsome for his own good, Sarah thought, turning back to the tray. "Good morning, sir. Breakfast is ready." "I didn't ask about breakfast." He moved closer, leaning against the granite counter. "I asked about you." Sarah kept her eyes on the tray, arranging the linen napkin just so. "Sarah Mitchell. I've been working here 3 weeks, covering Mrs. Chen's regular duties." "I know that. I read your file." Marcus picked up a grape, his eyes never leaving her face. 29 years old, lives in Riverside District, has a 6-year-old daughter. "But that's just paper. I want to know about the real you." "With all due respect, sir, I'm here to work." She finally looked at him, keeping her expression neutral, not to chat. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or amusement. "That's an interesting answer. People usually love talking to me." "People want things from you," Sarah responded, picking up the tray. "I just want to do my job in peace." She walked past him toward the dining room, feeling the weight of his gaze on her back. She knew men like Marcus Harrison. She'd grown up watching employers treat housekeepers like entertainment. Her grandmother always said, "Sarah, rich men think everything has a price. Never forget your dignity isn't for sale." The morning passed in familiar rhythm. Sarah moved through rooms with practiced efficiency, dusting surfaces that barely collected dust, straightening pillows that no one disturbed, polishing mirrors that reflected only emptiness. The house was beautiful and cold, like a magazine spread where no one actually lived. She was cleaning the library when she heard his footsteps. "Sarah." She turned to find Marcus leaning in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with unnerving intensity. "Yes, sir? I have a proposition for you." Her hands stilled on the bookshelf. "I'm not interested in propositions. You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to." Sarah resumed her dusting, heart beating faster despite her calm exterior. "I'm here to clean your house. That's the only arrangement I need." "It's not. I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate." He stepped into the library, running a hand through his hair. "I'm talking about dinner, getting to know each other better." Sarah set down her cleaning cloth and faced him directly. "No." Marcus blinked. "No? No, sir. I won't have dinner with you. I won't get to know you better. I'm not interested." "But you don't even know me." "I know enough." Sarah straightened her apron. "I know men who think money opens every door, who treat women like trophies to be won, who've never heard the word no in their lives and don't know how to handle it. You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think." She walked to the door, pausing beside him. "And I appreciate the offer, but I prefer to keep things professional. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She left him standing there, confused and probably insulted for the first time in years. Her hands trembled slightly as she descended the stairs. Not from fear, but from indignation. How dare he? How dare he assume she'd just fall into his arms because he decided she was his next diversion? In the laundry room, she pressed her palms against the cool washing machine, breathing deeply. She needed this job, needed the money for Emma's school, for their small apartment, for the life she was trying to build. But she'd walked away from better-paying positions before when employers crossed lines, and she'd do it again if necessary. Mom always said dignity costs nothing, but it's worth everything, she whispered to herself. The afternoon stretched long. Sarah worked methodically, avoiding areas where Marcus might be. But the house wasn't that large, not really, and their paths crossed again in the hallway outside his study. "Sarah, wait." She stopped, but didn't turn. "Yes, sir." He hesitated, and she heard something in his voice she hadn't expected. Uncertainty. "I apologize. That was inappropriate." Sarah turned slowly. Marcus stood with his hands in his pockets, looking less like the commanding businessman and more like a man who genuinely realized he'd made a mistake. "I'm not used to being told no," he admitted. "That's not an excuse, just an explanation." "Maybe you should get used to it," Sarah said quietly. "It's good for the soul." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Is that so?" "That's so." She softened slightly, seeing something vulnerable beneath his confidence. "Mr. Harrison, I'm sure you're a decent man when you try, but I have a daughter who watches everything I do, and I need to show her that no man, no matter how rich or handsome, is worth compromising her dignity for." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "Your grandmother taught you that. How did you? The way you talk about dignity. It's not something you learned. It's something you were raised with." He leaned against the wall. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. Sarah felt a familiar ache in her chest. "She passed 2 years ago. I'm sorry." The apology sounded genuine. Sarah nodded acknowledgement, then gestured to her cleaning cart. "I really do need to finish my work." "Of course." Marcus stepped aside. "But Sarah, thank you." "For what?" "For treating me like a person who needs correction, not like a checkbook to be managed." She studied his face, seeing something there that made her pause. Loneliness, perhaps. The kind that came from being surrounded by people who wanted things from you, but never truly saw you. "You're welcome," she said finally. "Now please let me work." That evening, as Sarah rode the bus home through darkening streets, she thought about Marcus Harrison. He was dangerous, not in the way of violence or cruelty, but in the way of men who genuinely didn't understand their own power. Men who could upend your life without meaning to, simply because they'd never learned the word no. Emma was waiting at the window when Sarah climbed the stairs to their second-floor apartment, her face lighting up like sunshine. "Mommy! Hey, baby!" Sarah scooped her daughter into her arms, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Were you good for Mrs. Rodriguez today?" "So good. I did all my homework and helped water her plants." Emma pulled back, eyes shining. "Did you have a good day at work?" Sarah thought about Marcus Harrison's offer, his confusion when she refused, the genuine apology in his voice. "I had an interesting day," she said carefully. "But yes, a good one, because I stood up for what was right, like you always tell me to do." "Exactly like that, sweet girl." Sarah kissed her forehead. "Now, how about we make spaghetti for dinner and you tell me everything you learned today?" As Emma chattered about her day, Sarah made dinner in their tiny kitchen. The apartment was small. One bedroom they shared, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, a living room that doubled as Sarah's sleeping space on the pull-out couch. But it was theirs. Clean, safe, filled with love and laughter, and Emma's drawings covering every wall. Later, after Emma was asleep, Sarah stood on their small balcony looking at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marcus Harrison was probably in his 17-room mansion, surrounded by luxury and utterly alone. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because sympathy was what got women into trouble with men like that. They mistook kindness for invitation, saw vulnerability as opportunity. Sarah had learned that lesson watching her mother make excuses for her father's behavior, watching other housekeepers lose their jobs over misunderstandings that weren't really misunderstandings at all. "No," she said quietly to the night air. "The answer is no, and it stays no." She didn't know then that her refusal had planted something in Marcus Harrison's mind, a seed of obsession wrapped in confusion, a need to understand what he couldn't have. She didn't know that saying no would change both their lives forever. All she knew was that she'd protected her dignity today, and that was enough. For now, that was enough. 3 weeks crawled by like wounded animals. Sarah felt Marcus's eyes on her constantly now. Not in the predatory way some men watched. This was different. Worse, somehow. He studied her like a puzzle he couldn't solve, a door that wouldn't open no matter how hard he pushed. She caught him staring when she polished the banister, when she arranged flowers in the parlor, when she simply walked past his study. It made her skin crawl. Not from fear, but from the weight of being observed like a specimen under glass. "Mrs. Chen's coming back next week," George mentioned one morning, trimming the rose bushes near the front entrance. He clipped a wilted bloom, shaking his head. "Shame. You're better at the job than she ever was. Don't let her hear you say that." Sarah smiled, but her stomach dropped. One more week of this salary, then back to scraping by on whatever work the agency could find. "Mr. Harrison asked about you yesterday," George continued, not meeting her eyes. "Wanted to know if you'd said anything. About him." Sarah's hands stilled on the grocery bag she was carrying in. "What did you tell him?" "Told him you keep to yourself. Do your work. Go home." George finally looked at her, concern creasing his weathered face. "Sarah, be careful. I've worked for rich folks 30 years. When they get interested in someone like us, it never ends well." "I know." She shifted the bags. "Believe me, I know." But knowing and being prepared were different things entirely. That afternoon, Sarah was in the laundry room folding sheets when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, male, deliberate. She didn't turn around. "Sarah." "Yes, Mr. Harrison." She kept folding. Crisp hospital corners, the way her grandmother taught her. "I need to ask you something." "I'm listening." She heard him shift his weight, uncomfortable. Good. Let him be uncomfortable for once in his privileged life. "Why do you work so hard?" Marcus asked finally. "I've watched you. You clean like it matters. Like these rooms are your own." Sarah's hands paused on a pillowcase. The question caught her off guard. Not because it was invasive, but because it was genuine. Because it does matter. She resumed folding, slower now. "Every job I do is a promise to my daughter. That will be okay. That hard work means something. That she can be proud of her mother. She should be." His voice was quiet. "Very proud." Sarah turned then, really looked at him. Marcus stood in the doorway of the laundry room. Expensive suit slightly rumpled, tie loosened. He looked tired, human, almost vulnerable. Almost. "Was there something else you needed, sir?" "No." "Yes." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I don't know. I wanted you to know that I see you. Really see you. Not just as the help." The words should have been kind, should have been respectful. Instead, they felt like oil on her skin. Slick, uncomfortable, impossible to wash away. "Mr. Harrison." Sarah set down the pillowcase, facing him fully. "I appreciate that you're trying. I do. But I don't need to be seen by you. I need to be left alone to do my work. Why are you so determined to keep me at a distance? Because men like you don't understand distance. You see it as a challenge, not a boundary." His jaw tightened. "You keep saying men like me. You don't know me." "Don't I?" Sarah crossed her arms. "Let me guess. Private schools. College your father paid for. First job handed to you through family connections. Every door opened before you even reached for the handle." Marcus's face flushed. Anger, shame, she couldn't tell. "My life hasn't been as easy as you think. Maybe not, but I guarantee it's been easier than mine." Sarah picked up the laundry basket. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have beds to make." She walked past him, close enough to smell his expensive cologne, cedar, and something sharp, something that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She felt him watch her climb the stairs, felt the weight of questions he wanted to ask, but didn't. Good. Let him wonder. Let him stay up at night trying to figure out why his money and looks and charm didn't work on her like they worked on everyone else. The following morning, Sarah arrived to find George's replacement at the gate, a younger man she didn't recognize. "ID, please." "I work here. George knows me." "George called in sick. ID." She showed her badge, unsettled. George never called in sick. In the month she'd been coming here, he'd been as reliable as sunrise. The house felt different too. Quieter somehow, though it was always quiet. Sarah moved through her routine, but something nagged at her, a feeling, the way animals sense storms before they arrive. She was cleaning the guest bathroom when she saw it, a box on the vanity, large, wrapped in paper that probably cost more than her weekly groceries. No card, no label, just sitting there like it had every right to be. Sarah's hands trembled as she backed away from it. No, absolutely not. She found Marcus in his study, on a phone call. He held up one finger. Wait, but she shook her head. I need to speak with you now. Something in her voice made him end the call mid-sentence. What's wrong? The box. In the guest bathroom. Sarah's voice shook with fury she could barely contain. What is it? A gift. He stood, came around the desk. You thought wrong. She cut him off, words sharp as broken glass. I told you no. I've told you no multiple times. What part of that word don't you understand? It's just a dress, Sarah, for dinner. I have a business event next weekend and thought you might what? She stepped forward, rage overtaking caution. Might be your accessory? Your date? Your pretty thing to show off? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Sarah's voice rose, months of held-back frustration exploding. Because from where I stand, you asked me to dinner. I said no, and now you've bought me a dress, assuming that changes my answer. Do you know what that is? Do you know what you just did? Marcus paled. I was trying to be nice. Nice respects boundaries. Nice hears no and accepts it. Nice doesn't try to buy compliance. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. You just tried to purchase me, Mr. Harrison. Like I'm another possession to add to this empty house. I didn't. I would never. He stumbled over words, face draining of color as realization hit. You just did. Sarah's voice went cold, deadly quiet. And you know what the worst part is? You genuinely don't see it. You think because you wrapped it nice and picked expensive, that makes it okay. That makes it generous. Sarah, please. My name is Mrs. Mitchell. She emphasized each word. And I quit. The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus stared at her, mouth open, clearly not expecting this turn. You can't quit. You need this job. Don't you dare. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper more dangerous than shouting. Don't you dare use my daughter against me. Don't you dare weaponize my financial situation. That's not what I... Get out of my way. Sarah, wait. Please. He moved to block the door, hands raised. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I didn't think... That's the problem. You didn't think. You just did what you wanted, like always. She pushed past him, shoulder hitting his chest hard enough to make him stumble. She packed her cleaning supplies with shaking hands. The cart rattled as she wheeled it toward the service entrance. Behind her, she heard Marcus's footsteps. Don't make me call security, she said without turning. I'll double your pay. Sarah froze. Slowly, so slowly, she turned to face him. What did you just say? Marcus looked desperate now. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Double your pay. Triple it. Whatever you need to stay. I'll even set up a college fund for Emma, private school tuition, whatever. The slap echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. Sarah's hand stung. Her palm burned where it connected with his face. Marcus stood there, head turned from the impact, red mark already blooming on his cheek. You just offered to pay me for my company. Her voice shook with rage and tears she refused to shed. Do you know what that makes you? Do you understand what you just became? I didn't mean it like that. You did. You absolutely did. Sarah grabbed her purse from the cart. You think everything has a price. Everyone has a price. Well, here's a lesson your money can't buy, Mr. Harrison. Some things are sacred. Some people won't be bought. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... You keep saying that. But your actions show exactly what you mean. Sarah walked to the door, hand on the knob. I've met men like you my whole life. My father was like you. Thought money fixed everything. Bought my mother jewelry after every affair, like diamonds erased betrayal. She died alone in a county hospital while he vacationed with wife number 3. Marcus flinched as if she'd hit him again. I have a daughter, Sarah continued, tears finally spilling over. A beautiful, smart, kind little girl who watches everything I do. And I will not teach her that self-respect has a price tag, that dignity can be purchased, that any man, no matter how rich or charming, is worth selling your soul for. I never asked you to sell anything. You did. You just don't hear yourself. Sarah opened the door. Cold air rushed in, making her shiver. Goodbye, Mr. Harrison. I hope someday you find whatever it is you're really looking for. But I can guarantee it's not me. Sarah, please, don't go like this. It's Mrs. Mitchell, and I'm already gone. She walked out into the morning air, legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. The gate seemed miles away. Behind her, she heard the front door close softly, Marcus not even trying to follow, probably standing in his marble foyer, hand on his reddening cheek, finally understanding what rejection actually felt like. By the time Sarah reached the bus stop, tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, from rage, from the exhaustion of living in a world where men like Marcus Harrison thought everything, everyone, could be bought if the price was right. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands, called the agency. This is Sarah Mitchell. I need to report that I'm leaving the Harrison job, effective immediately. But Mrs. Mitchell, that's our highest paying client. Did something happen? Yes, something happened. Sarah watched a bus approach, not hers, but someone's. I remembered my worth, and no paycheck is high enough to make me forget it again. She hung up before the woman could respond. On the bus ride home, Sarah watched the city blur past, wealthy neighborhoods giving way to middle-class areas, then to her own neighborhood, where houses crowded together and children played in streets instead of private yards. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She deleted it without reading. It buzzed again, and again. On the fifth buzz, she turned the phone off entirely. When Sarah climbed the stairs to her apartment, Mrs. Rodriguez was watering plants on her balcony next door. "You're home early, mija. Everything okay?" "No." Sarah unlocked her door. "But it will be." Inside, she sat on the couch, her bed, really, and let herself cry. Not quiet tears, but the kind that shook her whole body. The kind that came from months of holding everything together, staying strong, being dignified in the face of disrespect. She cried for the job she needed, for the money that would have changed Emma's life, for the unfairness of living in a world where powerful men could try to buy you and call it kindness. But underneath the tears was something else, something hard and unbreakable. Pride. She had walked away, head high, dignity intact. She had slapped a millionaire and told him exactly what he was. She had chosen her self-respect over financial security. And somehow, impossibly, that made her feel wealthy in ways Marcus Harrison would never understand. Marcus stood in the empty foyer long after Sarah left, his cheek still burning where her hand had connected. Not from pain, the physical sting had faded within minutes, but from shame, from the sudden, horrifying clarity of what he'd done. "You just offered to pay me for my company." Her words echoed through the 17 rooms like ghosts. He walked through them now, seeing his home for the first time through her eyes. Marble imported from Italy that no one walked on. Crystal chandeliers illuminating empty dinner tables. Art worth millions hanging on walls no one looked at. A mausoleum. That's what she'd called it once, though not to his face. He'd overheard her talking to George about how sad it was. All this beauty with no life in it. He'd been insulted then. Now he understood. Marcus poured himself bourbon from a decanter older than he was, collapsed onto the leather sofa in his study. The liquor burned going down, but couldn't touch the cold spreading through his chest. What had he become? When had he become this? His phone buzzed. Again. And again. Business calls he couldn't bring himself to answer. What did any of it matter? He'd built an empire on sand, surrounded himself with people who wanted things from him, never once asking what he actually wanted for himself. The truth sat heavy in his gut. He didn't know what he wanted, who he was without the money and power and status. Men like you don't change. Sarah's words, Sarah's judgment, Sarah's disgust. And the worst part? She was right. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights and whiskey-soaked days. Marcus stopped going to the office, stopped answering calls. Mrs. Chen returned from vacation to find the house in disarray. Not dirty exactly, but lifeless, like the soul had gone out of it. "Mr. Harrison, are you feeling unwell?" She stood in his study doorway, concern creasing her face. "I'm fine. You haven't left this room in 3 days." "I said I'm fine." His voice came out harsher than intended. Mrs. Chen flinched, and he felt another wave of self-loathing. Even kindness had become impossible for him. "Sir, there's a Mr. Patterson here to see you. Says it's urgent." Marcus waved her away. "Tell him I'm not available." I told him that. He says if you don't see him now, the next conversation will be with federal investigators. That got his attention. Marcus sat up, tried to smooth his rumpled shirt. "Send him in." James Patterson was his attorney, had been since Marcus's father died, and left him the company. The man walked in now looking 10 years older, carrying a briefcase that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. "Marcus, we need to talk. Now." "So talk." "It's Devon." James set the briefcase on the desk with a thud. "Your business partner. He's been embezzling. For years, apparently. Millions of dollars, hidden accounts, falsified records. It's bad. Very bad." The words took a moment to penetrate the fog in Marcus's brain. Devon? His college roommate. Best man at his wedding that never happened. The person he trusted most in the world. That's not possible. It's not only possible, it's documented. James opened the briefcase, pulled out files. Numbers swam before Marcus's eyes. Zeros upon zeros in the wrong columns. Transfers he never authorized. Loans against properties he didn't know about. How much? Everything, Marcus. He took everything. The room tilted. Marcus gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. Define everything. The company's bankrupt. Your personal accounts are drained. The properties have liens you didn't know about. There are debts in your name that'll take decades to pay off. James's voice softened. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He covered his tracks brilliantly. By the time we discovered it, he was already out of the country. Marcus stared at the papers. His life, reduced to numbers on a page. Numbers that added up to nothing. "The house?" he asked quietly. "First thing they'll take. Along with the cars, the art, the furniture. Everything." "When?" 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. After James left, Marcus sat in the gathering darkness. He should feel devastated, destroyed. Instead, he felt something else entirely. Relief. Strange, impossible relief. Like the universe had finally called in a debt he'd been carrying his whole life without knowing it. He thought about Sarah, about her walking away from money she desperately needed because her dignity mattered more. He'd thought her foolish then, stubborn. Now he understood she was the only wise person he'd ever met. The days before the auction passed in a strange dream. Marcus watched strangers walk through his home, appraising items, putting price tags on his life. The Monet in the hallway, gone. His father's desk, gone. The dining table that sat 16 but never more than 1, gone. Mrs. Chen cried as she packed her things. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. I wish I could stay, but I understand." He gave her 3-month severance from what little remained. "You were good to me. Better than I deserved." George was next. The groundskeeper stood in the garden he'd tended for years, hat in weathered hands. "Heard about your troubles. Sorry about that. Don't be. I had it coming." Marcus looked at the hydrangeas. Sarah's favorite, he'd noticed. "George, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Always am. That day I asked about Sarah. You warned me to be careful. Why?" George was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because I've seen men like you before. Rich, bored, thinking regular folks are toys to play with. Seen housekeepers lose jobs, lose dignity, lose themselves trying to please men who just wanted entertainment. Did you think I was like that? At first? Yes." George met his eyes directly. "But then I saw how you looked at her, and I got scared for different reasons." "What reasons?" "Because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't cruelty. It's when a powerful man decides he loves someone, decides he'll help them, fix them, save them, all without asking if they want saving." George shook his head. "That kind of love destroys just as surely as hate. Just takes longer." The words hit like bullets. Marcus stumbled back, hit the garden bench, sat down hard. "She tried to tell me that. I didn't listen. Most folks don't. That's why they need to lose everything before they learn." After George left, Marcus sat alone in the garden. The evening air grew cold, but he didn't move. Just sat there among the hydrangeas, finally, seeing himself clearly. He wasn't a villain. Villains knew they were doing wrong. He was something worse. A man so used to getting what he wanted that he'd stopped considering whether he should want it in the first place. The morning of the auction, Marcus packed a single suitcase. Clothes, laptop, The one photo of his mother that predated his father's money. Everything else could go. The apartment he'd rented was in a neighborhood that would have terrified him months ago. Now it just looked real. Families on porches, kids playing in the street, laundry hanging from windows. Life, actual life, happening without permission or performance. His new home had 2 rooms, a bathroom the size of his former closet, and a view of the building next door. The rent was more than he could comfortably afford with no income, but less than he'd spent monthly on wine. That first night, Marcus slept on an air mattress on the floor. No Egyptian cotton sheets, no temperature control, no silence. Car alarms woke him at 3 a.m. Someone's music thumped through the walls. A couple fought loudly next door about grocery money, and he slept better than he had in years. The employment agency smelled like instant coffee and desperation. Marcus waited with a dozen other people, all clutching resumes, all wearing the same expression. Hope mixed with dread. Next. The woman behind the desk was middle-aged, with glasses on a chain and nails painted bright pink. She barely glanced at him. Name? Marcus Harrison. Her eyes snapped up. The Marcus Harrison? From Harrison Development? Former. I'm looking for work. What kind? Skepticism dripped from every word. Anything. Management, planning, administration. Don't have those. Got warehouse positions. Retail, food service. She waited for him to flinch. When he didn't, her expression softened slightly. You serious about this? I have rent to pay. I'm serious. She studied him for a long moment. There's a diner on 5th Street. Owner's looking for someone to work the grill. Early mornings, minimum wage, hard work. Interested? Marcus thought about Sarah waking before dawn every day, riding 3 buses to clean houses. Thought about her hands, rough from cleaning products and hard work. Very interested. Really? Because a lot of guys like you— I'm not like me anymore, Marcus interrupted. I'm trying very hard not to be. The woman, her nameplate read Gloria, nodded slowly. Okay, I'll call them. But Harrison, don't waste their time. Joe's a good man, and he doesn't need some rich kid playing at being poor. I understand. The diner was called Sunrise. Marcus arrived at 5:30 the next morning as instructed. The owner, Joe, was a bear of a man with a stained apron and suspicious eyes. You're the new guy? Yes, sir. Ever worked a grill before? No, sir. Ever worked, period? Marcus hesitated. Honesty seemed important. Not like this. Not with my hands. Joe snorted. At least you're honest. Come on, I'll show you how not to poison my customers. The first day was hell. Marcus burned himself on the grill, dropped an entire order of pancakes, mixed up tickets, and served the wrong food to 3 different tables. His feet ached, his back screamed, and his hands blistered from grease burns. You're terrible at this, Joe observed during the lunch rush. I know, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Get better. Joe flipped an egg one-handed, didn't even look at the grill. Fast-paced here. You adapt or you drown, your choice. Marcus adapted. Slowly, painfully, but he adapted. By the end of the first week, he could crack eggs without getting shell in them. By the second, he'd memorized the tickets. By the third, Joe stopped hovering. Not bad, Harrison. Still slow, but not bad. The praise shouldn't have mattered. It was just a job, just eggs and pancakes and burgers. But Marcus felt something warm in his chest. Pride, real pride, in work he'd earned with his own hands. The other employees were less hostile now, too. Rosie, the waitress with red hair and a sharper tongue, had stopped making jokes about his soft hands. Tommy, the dishwasher, occasionally invited him to smoke breaks Marcus didn't take, but appreciated anyway. You're not what I expected, Rosie said one morning during a rare lull. What did you expect? Some entitled jerk playing at being poor, slumming it until Daddy's lawyer fixes everything. She refilled coffee pots. But you're actually trying. That's unexpected. I'm trying to figure out who I am without money, Marcus admitted. Turns out I have no idea. Join the club. Most of us are figuring it out too. She smiled. First genuine smile she'd given him. Difference is, we've been doing it our whole lives. One evening, weeks into his new life, Marcus walked home through streets he'd never have set foot in before. He passed a corner store and on impulse went inside, bought dinner, instant noodles and a can of soup, the kind of food he'd have sneered at months ago. In his tiny apartment, He boiled water on his hot plate, ate standing at the counter because his furniture consisted of the air mattress and one folding chair. The noodles were salty and cheap and somehow more satisfying than any meal at his old dining table. His phone, the cheap one he'd bought to replace his smartphone, buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello? Marcus? It's James Patterson. His attorney. Marcus's stomach dropped. More bad news? Depends on perspective. The feds found Devon. He's being extradited. They might be able to recover some of what he stole, but... James paused. It'll take years. Legal battles, frozen assets, bankruptcy proceedings. Even if you win, you'll get back pennies on the dollar. Okay. Okay, that's it? Marcus, your entire life was stolen from you. No. Oh, Marcus looked around his small apartment. My money was stolen. My life is still here. I don't understand. That's okay. I'm only just starting to understand it myself. After hanging up, Marcus stood at his window, looking at the street below. A mother walked by holding her daughter's hand. The little girl skipped, backpack bouncing, talking animatedly about something. The mother smiled, tired but present, really listening. He thought about Sarah, about Emma, about dignity that couldn't be bought or sold, about the fact that losing everything had somehow saved him. His cheek didn't burn anymore where she'd slapped him, but his conscience did. Every day, every moment, he carried the weight of what he'd tried to do. How he'd tried to buy her, manipulate her, control her, all while calling it kindness. I'm sorry, he whispered to the empty room, to Sarah, wherever she was. I'm so sorry. The words couldn't reach her, couldn't undo what he'd done, but they were true, and that was something. It was a start. In the darkness of his small apartment, Marcus Harrison, former millionaire, current line cook, future unknown, finally began to understand what Sarah had been trying to teach him all along. That worth isn't measured in bank accounts, that dignity isn't for sale, that sometimes the only way to find yourself is to lose everything you thought defined you. He was broke, alone, starting from nothing, and for the first time in his entire privileged life, he was becoming someone worth being. The rain came down in sheets that afternoon, turning the streets into rivers. Sarah stood under the awning of the closed pharmacy, with Emma pressed against her side, both of them shivering despite their jackets. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Emma whispered, tugging her mother's sleeve. Sarah checked her wallet. $18 until the end of the week. The agency had found her work, but not as much as before. 2 houses now instead of 3, both paying less than the Harrison job. They were barely making it. "I know, baby. Let's find somewhere to warm up and get you something to eat." They ran through the downpour, Emma's little hand tight in hers, until Sarah spotted a diner with glowing windows. Sunrise Diner, the sign read. She'd never been here before, but it looked warm and cheap. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. The place smelled like coffee and bacon grease and hope, the scent of working people filling their bellies before facing the world. Sarah found a booth near the back, helped Emma out of her wet jacket. "Can we get pancakes?" Emma's eyes were bright with hope. "We'll see what they have, sweetheart." A waitress with red hair and kind eyes brought menus. "You two look like drowned rats. Let me get you some hot coffee, honey. And how about chocolate milk for the little one?" "Just water is fine," Sarah started to say. "Coffee and chocolate milk," the waitress, her name tag read Rosie, insisted with a wink. "On the house. We've all been caught in the rain before." Sarah's throat tightened with unexpected gratitude. "Thank you." While Emma studied the menu with intense concentration, Sarah looked around the diner. Worn booths patched with duct tape. Cracked linoleum floors cleaned to a shine. Pictures on the walls of regular people. Customers, maybe, or staff. A place that had character, history, life. So different from the Harrison mansion with its perfect emptiness. She hadn't let herself think about Marcus in weeks. Hadn't wondered if he'd noticed she was gone, if he'd tried to replace her, if her rejection had meant anything at all to him. She'd been too busy surviving, finding work, paying bills, making sure Emma never felt the weight of their financial struggle. "Mommy, look! They have funny face pancakes." "That sounds perfect, baby." The waitress came back with their drinks, pulled out her order pad. "What can I get you, ladies?" "Funny face pancakes for my daughter. And I'll just have..." "Order for yourself too, honey," Rosie interrupted gently. "You look like you haven't eaten all day." I'm fine, really. 2 funny face pancakes, a male voice said from behind the counter. And coffee refills on me all afternoon. Sarah's head snapped up. Her heart stopped. Marcus stood at the grill, wearing a stained apron over a t-shirt, his hair damp with sweat, a grease burn visible on his forearm. He looked thinner, exhausted. His hands that had never held anything heavier than a briefcase, were working the grill with practiced movements, flipping eggs, sliding spatulas under hash browns. Their eyes met across the diner. Time froze. The noise of other customers faded to white static. "Sarah," he breathed. She couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was seeing. Marcus Harrison, millionaire, mansion owner, the man who'd tried to buy her, working in a diner, cooking, his expensive watch gone, his tailored clothes replaced with worn jeans and a cheap t-shirt. "You two know each other?" Rosie asked, glancing between them with open curiosity. "We did," Sarah managed. "Once." Emma tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, who's that man?" "Just someone Mommy used to work for, baby." Marcus flinched at the words. Good. Let him hurt. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt. But then she noticed his hands trembling slightly as he cracked eggs onto the grill. Noticed the careful way he moved, like someone still learning. Noticed the absence of everything. The arrogance, the entitlement, the smooth confidence that had made her want to slap him. Wait, she had slapped him. The memory burned fresh. "Order up," Joe called from somewhere in the back. Marcus jumped, nodded, focused on the grill with intense concentration. He was nervous, scared of messing up. She'd never seen him scared of anything before. "He's new," Rosie said quietly, following Sarah's gaze. "Started about 6 weeks back. Couldn't boil water at first, but Joe says he's a hard worker. Never complains, always early, picks up extra shifts when we need him. 6 weeks. Right around when Sarah had quit. Right around when she'd walked out of his mansion and his life. What happened to him?" Sarah heard herself ask. Rosie shrugged. "Don't know the whole story, but between you and me, honey, I've seen men who've lost everything. They have a look. He's got that look." Sarah's coffee went cold in her hands as she watched Marcus work. He moved with none of his former grace. Everything was effort, concentration, careful practice. When he finally brought their pancakes over, his hands shook slightly, setting down the plates. Funny faces as ordered. He smiled at Emma, and it was different from before. Genuine, tired, real. Emma giggled. "They have blueberry eyes. The best kind." Marcus glanced at Sarah, then away quickly. "Enjoy your meal." "Wait." The word came out before she could stop it. He paused, not quite looking at her. "Yes? How long have you been working here?" "Since I needed a job." His voice was quiet, stripped of the smooth confidence she remembered. "Since I needed to learn what work actually means." "What happened to—" She stopped. Emma was listening. Marcus understood. "Everything. I lost everything." He met her eyes finally. "Turns out when you build your life on sand, the tide eventually comes in." "Marcus, order up!" Joe's voice boomed from the kitchen. "Coming." Marcus turned back to Sarah for just a moment. "I'm glad you're okay. You and Emma. I'm glad you're okay." He hurried away before she could respond, back to the grill where orders were piling up. Sarah watched him work, the care he took with each plate, the way he double-checked every order, the quiet apology he gave when someone sent food back. "Mommy, can we come here again?" Emma asked through a mouthful of pancake. "These are really good." "We'll see, baby." But Sarah couldn't look away from Marcus, from this impossible transformation, from the man who'd tried to buy her now earning minimum wage flipping eggs. Was it real? Or was this another game, another manipulation? They ate in silence. Emma colored on the paper placemat with crayons Rosie brought. Sarah drank coffee and watched Marcus through the serving window, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. When Rosie brought the check, Sarah's heart sank. Even with the free drinks, it was more than she should spend. "That'll be $6, Rosie said. Sarah looked at the check. The pancakes alone should have been 10. "This isn't right." "Sure it is. Employee discount," Rosie winked. "Marcus said so." "I don't want his charity." "Honey, it's not charity. It's a discount we give to friends and family of staff. You're not special. Everyone gets it." Rosie leaned in, voice dropping. Between you and me, he didn't even ask if you two were friends. He just wrote it down and told Joe it was family of staff. Joe's got a soft spot for single moms, so he approved it without question. Sarah's hands trembled as she counted out bills. $6. She could afford $6. "Thank you," she whispered. As they stood to leave, Emma ran ahead to look at the pictures on the wall. Sarah found herself walking toward the counter where Marcus was cleaning the grill, his back to her. "Marcus." He turned, surprise and something like fear crossing his face. "Sarah. Is everything okay? Was the food? Why are you here? Really?" He set down the spatula, wiped his hands on his apron. Up close, she could see the changes more clearly. Weight loss, dark circles under his eyes, calluses forming on his palms, the kind of tired that came from honest work and sleepless nights. "Because I lost everything," he said simply. "My business partner embezzled millions. The house is gone. The cars, everything. I'm living in a studio apartment I can barely afford and working here to pay rent." Sarah searched his face for lies, for manipulation, found none, just exhaustion and something that looked like peace. "And the job? How did you end up here?" "Employment agency. Same one you probably use." He smiled sadly. "Turns out when you've never actually worked, no one wants to hire you." Joe was the only one willing to take a chance on someone with no experience and soft hands. "Your hands aren't soft anymore." He looked down at them, the burns, the calluses, the red marks from the grill. "No, they're not." "Mommy, come look at this picture," Emma called from across the diner. "I should go." Sarah stepped back. "Thank you for the discount." "Sarah, wait." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "Can I say something? Just one thing, and then I'll leave you alone forever if that's what you want." She hesitated. Emma was safe across the room. Rosie was watching. Sarah nodded once. "I'm sorry." The words came out raw, honest. "I'm sorry for everything I did. For not respecting your no. For trying to buy your attention. For offering to pay you like—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Like you were something that could be purchased. You were right. About everything. And I'm sorry." Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Why now? Why does it matter now?" "Because losing everything taught me what you tried to tell me. That dignity isn't for sale. That worth comes from who you are, not what you own. That I was hollow inside and trying to fill it with things instead of character." He laughed bitterly. "Took losing it all to understand what you knew all along." "Marcus, need you on dishes." Joe's voice broke the moment. "I have to go." Marcus looked at her one more time. "I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad I didn't destroy you the way I destroyed everything else I touched. And I'm sorry. For all of it." He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the kitchen. Sarah stood frozen, emotions warring inside her. Anger at what he'd done. Sympathy for what he'd lost. Confusion about whether his transformation was real. "Mommy, are you crying?" Emma appeared at her elbow, concern on her small face. "No, baby. Just thinking." Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. "Come on, let's get you home and dry." Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun broke through clouds, casting everything in gold light. Sarah held Emma's hand as they walked to the bus stop, her mind spinning. Marcus Harrison had lost everything, was working minimum wage, living in poverty, and somehow, impossibly, seemed more alive than when he'd had millions. "Did that man make you sad?" Emma asked as they waited for the bus. "I don't know what he made me feel, sweetheart. He seemed nice. Sad, but nice. Out of the mouths of children." Sarah looked back at the diner, could see Marcus through the window, washing dishes, his head down, working. "Yeah," she said softly. "Sad but nice. Maybe." That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah stood on their small balcony. Somewhere across the city, Marcus was probably in his studio apartment, probably exhausted from his shift, probably sitting alone with his thoughts and regrets. She'd wanted him to learn, to understand, to lose the arrogance and entitlement that made him think he could buy anything, anyone. But seeing him actually broken, actually humble, actually working with burned hands and tired eyes, hurt in ways she didn't expect. Good, she told herself firmly. He needed to learn. This is good. But her heart didn't quite believe her, because the truth was messier than simple justice. The truth was that watching someone genuinely transform, even someone who'd hurt you, was complicated. It didn't erase what they'd done, but it proved that people could change, could grow, could become better versions of themselves. Even men like Marcus Harrison. Especially men like Marcus Harrison. Sarah went inside, checked on Emma one more time, then lay down on her pull-out couch. Tomorrow she'd work 2 houses. Tomorrow she'd scrimp and save and fight for every dollar. Tomorrow she'd be strong and dignified and unbreakable. But tonight, just tonight, she let herself feel something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not hope for romance or rescue or happily ever after. Those were fairy tales, and she'd stopped believing in fairy tales long ago. Hope that people could change, that suffering could teach, that even the most entitled person could learn humility if life knocked them down hard enough. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't as fixed and hopeless as it sometimes seemed. And that hope, small and fragile as it was, felt like enough. For now, it felt like enough. 3 months passed, like water through fingers, slow and fast at once. Sarah found herself at the Sunrise Diner more often than she'd planned. Not every week, not even every other week. But when Emma asked for funny face pancakes, when the rain caught them off guard, when Sarah needed a place that felt safe and warm, they ended up there. And each time Marcus was behind the counter, working, learning, changing. She watched the transformation without meaning to, watched his hands grow more confident on the grill, watched him laugh with Rosie about a difficult customer, watched him stay late to help Tommy with the dishes when the kid's mother got sick, watched him become someone she didn't recognize, someone quieter, humbler, more real than the man who'd tried to buy her dignity. "He asks about you," Rosie mentioned one afternoon while Sarah waited for their order. "Never pushy, just asks if you're doing okay, if Emma's doing okay. What do you tell him? The truth, that you're surviving, that you're strong." Rosie wiped down the counter. "He never asks for more than that, just nods and goes back to work." Sarah didn't know what to do with that information. Didn't know how to reconcile the Marcus who'd offered her money for her company with the Marcus who asked about her daughter with no expectation of response. Winter arrived early that year, bringing cold that cut through coats and made Emma's lips turn blue on the walk home from school. Sarah's hours had increased slightly. The agency found her a 3rd house, but the pay barely covered heating costs. One particularly brutal afternoon, Sarah's bus broke down 6 blocks from the diner. She and Emma huddled together at the stop, waiting for the next one, shivering so hard their teeth chattered. "Mommy, I can't feel my fingers," Emma whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. Sarah made a decision. "Come on, baby. Let's get warm." The diner's heat hit them like a wall of blessing. Sarah's glasses fogged immediately. Emma's nose was running, her little body shaking. "Oh, honey, come here." Rosie appeared instantly, with blankets kept behind the counter. "Joe, hot chocolate for the little one. Extra marshmallows." "Coming up," Joe's voice boomed from the kitchen. But it was Marcus who brought the hot chocolate. Marcus who knelt beside Emma with a towel, gently warming her frozen hands. Marcus who looked up at Sarah with eyes full of concern and nothing else. No expectation, no manipulation, just genuine care. "How long were you out there?" he asked quietly. 20 minutes. The bus broke down. 20. He stopped, jaw tightening. Then carefully, "Can I call you a cab? Please, just to get you home safe. I can't afford. On me. Not as anything. Just as someone who doesn't want to see a child freeze." His voice cracked slightly. "Please, Sarah, let me do this one thing right." She wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain her dignity, her independence, her boundaries. But Emma was still shaking, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford when her daughter's safety was at stake. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." Marcus called the cab, paid the driver in advance, gave him Sarah's address. When the car arrived, he walked them out, holding the door open against the bitter wind. "Be safe," he said. "Both of you." In the cab, Emma fell asleep against Sarah's side, finally warm. Sarah looked out the window at the city passing by, at Marcus's silhouette in the diner window getting smaller and smaller. He hadn't asked for anything, hadn't made it about him, just helped because help was needed. Maybe people really could change. The weeks following became a pattern. Sarah and Emma would visit the diner occasionally. Marcus would cook their food, Bring it with a small smile. Never linger unless invited. Sometimes they'd exchange a few words about the weather, about how Emma was doing in school, about nothing that mattered and everything that did. And slowly, carefully, something shifted. Not romance, not even friendship exactly. Something more complicated. An understanding, perhaps. A recognition of two people who'd hurt each other and learned from it. One evening, Sarah arrived to find the diner nearly empty. A rare, quiet moment between dinner rush and night owls. Emma had stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez, a Christmas party Sarah couldn't afford to take her to. Marcus was wiping down tables, his movements efficient and practiced now. He looked up when the bell chimed, smiled slightly. Sarah, alone tonight? Emma's at a party. She sat at the counter, suddenly exhausted. I just needed to not be in my apartment for a while. Coffee? Please. He poured it himself, slid it across the counter. The silence between them was comfortable now, not charged with tension and unspoken words. Can I ask you something? Marcus said finally, leaning against the counter but keeping respectful distance. You can ask. Can't promise I'll answer. Fair enough. He traced a water ring on the counter. That day you slapped me, in the mansion. When I offered you money. He stopped, collected himself. Did you know then that I'd lose everything? That I'd end up here? Sarah studied him, really looked at him. The Marcus who'd tried to buy her was gone, replaced by someone thinner, tireless, marked by honest work and hard lessons. No, she said honestly. I didn't know that would happen. Didn't wish it on you either, if you're wondering. I know you didn't. He smiled sadly. You're not cruel. You were just right. About what? About everything. About me thinking money solved problems. About me never building anything real. About me confusing obsession with, he trailed off, with whatever I thought I felt. Sarah sipped her coffee, letting the warmth spread through her. Outside, snow began to fall. Soft, quiet, covering the city's rough edges. You've changed, she said finally. Really changed. I didn't think it was possible. You want to know something? Marcus laughed without humor. Neither did I. I thought I was pretending at first. Playing poor, slumming it until I figured out how to get my life back. But somewhere along the way, he gestured to the diner, to his stained apron, to his scarred hands. This became real. I became real. What changed? I stopped trying to get back what I lost. Stopped seeing this as temporary. He met her eyes directly. I looked in the mirror one morning and realized I liked the man looking back at me better than the millionaire I used to be. And that terrified me. Why terrified? Because it meant you were right. It meant I'd wasted years being someone hollow and arrogant and empty. It meant everything I thought mattered, the money, the status, the power, was just noise covering up the fact that I was nothing underneath. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. You're not nothing. No, not anymore. Marcus smiled. Genuine, tired, peaceful. But I was, and I needed to lose everything to see it. Rosie emerged from the kitchen, saw them talking, hesitated. Should I give you two a minute? It's okay, Sarah said. We're just talking. But after Rosie disappeared back into the kitchen, Sarah found herself asking the question that had haunted her for months. Do you regret it? Losing everything? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Outside, the snow fell heavier, muffling the city sounds. No, he said finally. I regret how I treated you. I regret my entitlement, my arrogance, my blindness to how privileged I was. But losing the money, the house, the empire I didn't build? He shook his head. Best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to become someone worth being. And now? What happens now? Now I work. I pay my rent. I save a little each month. Maybe someday I'll have my own place. Not a mansion, just a small diner maybe. Something I built with my own hands. He smiled. Something real. Sarah's coffee had gone cold. She didn't care. I'm glad you found your way. I really am. I wouldn't have without you. Marcus's voice dropped. Without you saying no. Without you holding the mirror up and making me see what I'd become. You saved me, Sarah. Even while I was trying to destroy your peace. I didn't save you. You saved yourself. Maybe, but you showed me I needed saving. The bell above the door chimed. Other customers entered, shaking snow from their coats. The moment broke, shifted, became normal again. "I should go," Sarah said. "Pick up Emma." "Of course." Marcus stepped back, gave her space. "Sarah, one more thing." She paused, hand on her purse. "I don't expect anything from you. Not forgiveness, not friendship, not anything." His voice was steady, honest. "But I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you taught me, for showing me that dignity isn't for sale, that worth comes from character, not bank accounts, that real love, real care respects boundaries instead of bulldozing through them." Sarah felt something break open in her chest. Not romance, not attraction, something deeper, recognition of a fellow human who'd walked through fire and emerged transformed. "You're welcome," she whispered. "And Marcus, I forgive you, not because you earned it or deserve it, but because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you." His eyes shone with tears he didn't let fall. "Thank you. Thank you." Sarah left the diner and walked through the falling snow to pick up her daughter. Her heart felt lighter than it had in months. Years, maybe. She'd stood her ground, protected her dignity, refused to be bought or manipulated or controlled. And instead of destroying Marcus, which she could have done, which part of her had wanted to do, she'd inadvertently given him the greatest gift possible, the chance to become someone real. Winter melted into spring. Sarah's life didn't magically improve. She still struggled with bills, still worked multiple houses, still worried about Emma's future. But something had shifted inside her. A peace that came from knowing she'd held firm to her values even when it cost her. She passed the diner sometimes without going in. Saw Marcus through the window, laughing with customers, teaching a new employee how to work the grill, living a life that was small and real and his. They weren't friends exactly, weren't lovers, weren't anything definable. But one afternoon when Emma begged for pancakes, they went in. Marcus made them himself. Funny faces with blueberry eyes and strawberry smiles. He brought them over, sat down for just a moment in the booth across from them. "Emma, I hear you won the spelling bee at school," he said, genuine pride in his voice. "I did. I spelled magnificent and perseverance." Emma bounced in her seat. "Those are big words. Good for you." He looked at Sarah. "She gets that from you, the perseverance. We do what we have to do," Sarah said quietly. "No." Marcus shook his head. "You do what's right, even when it's hard. That's different. That's better." He stood to go back to work, paused. "Sarah, thank you for giving me the gift of a no when I needed it most, for showing me that the most loving thing someone can do is hold a boundary, for teaching me that real change comes from inside, not from circumstances." After he left, Emma asked, "Mommy, do you like that man?" Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. "I respect him," she said finally, "and sometimes that matters more than liking." That night, Sarah stood on her small balcony under stars that finally seemed bright. Her apartment was still small. Her bank account was still nearly empty. Emma's future was still uncertain. But Sarah Mitchell knew who she was, knew her worth, knew that she'd faced a wealthy, powerful man and stood her ground without apology. She'd taught Marcus Harrison that dignity couldn't be bought. But more importantly, she'd proven to herself that no amount of money, no offer of security, no temptation was worth compromising the values her grandmother had instilled in her. "Never forget your dignity isn't for sale," she whispered to the night sky. And she smiled, because she never had forgotten. Not for one moment, not for any price. Somewhere across the city, Marcus was probably finishing his shift. Tired, satisfied, earning minimum wage, but earning it honestly, with his own hands, on his own merit. Two people whose lives had collided painfully had both emerged better. Not together, not as a couple, but as individuals who'd learned what really mattered. Sarah had learned her no was powerful. Marcus had learned that no was a gift, and somehow, impossibly, that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.